This message brought to you by Sambo and Honky, and now by Cracker and Boy.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Julie Andrews.
On a wonderful evening like this, when the moon is as big as a yellow balloon.
Here I am on the Upper Salmon River near Shoup, Idaho, and as you can see, it's pretty narrow. So when I encounter rafters, there's really not enough room for both of us to squeeze by. Somebody's got to pull over. And usually on this stretch of river, it's kind of a two-way street. Sometimes I'll come around a corner and they will already be pulled over to the side and they will just wave me through, so I just blast on by. And other times that won't happen. They'll be in the middle of the river, so I'll just pull over and wait for them to drift on by. In this stretch of river, I think most of the rafters are actually pretty experienced, and that's probably one of the reasons why the interactions are pretty good with them. They understand that jet boaters will help them out if they get into trouble. And in other parts of the river, that's not so obvious. My interactions in other parts of the river tend to be pretty much a one-way street where I help them out and they hang BAs at me. It's not that they wouldn't help me if the need didn't arise, maybe they would. It's just the need never arises so far. So for those inclined to hang BAs, an important thing to realize is this is actually constitutionally protected free speech. So this was argued to the U.S. Supreme Court, I think in the 70s, where a woman was walking around some big city, like New York, with some protest sign that she was carrying, and her ass was hanging out the back of her dress. And so anyway, the Supreme Court decided that was constitutionally protected free speech. So, if somebody's hanging a BA at you, you can't suggest that, I'm going to call the sheriff and have the sheriff arrest him. Maybe the sheriff will arrest him, but you would actually be violating their constitutional rights. It's also important to note that hanging a BA is not without its risks legally. If while hanging a BA, your genitals are exposed, and if somebody sees your exposed genitals and is offended, then that is a crime. And depending on how young this person is, you may end up on a sex predator list for the rest of your life. So that's the potential risk, the serious downside of hanging a BA. Now, despite seeing all of these BAs, I continue to help floaters whenever they need help. For example, last year in Hell's Canyon, somebody waved me over to the side, and I was thinking, oh, holy crap, is this guy all pissed off because I waked him or something? So I pulled over, and he just needed a bottle of propane because he was out. So I tossed him one, and no charge. He seemed very happy about that. Another time, I came upon a pair of guys that were perched on a ledge on the north side of Black Creek Rapid. And if you know anything about that rapid and you know about that ledge, then you know that there's only one way off of it, and that is back into the water. And meanwhile, their raft was disappearing around the corner about a half mile downstream. So if somebody didn't rescue them off that rock, they were going to die of exposure overnight. So anyway, I picked them off the rock and took them back to the raft, which had eddied out with the help of their girlfriends, who had the foresight to stay with the raft, and they had eddied it out with the help of some other people that were downstream. Maybe the best story I have is I was about 15 miles downstream from Corn Creek at high water, and I saw an empty kayak come by, and so I tried to grab it while driving my boat, but I couldn't pull that off. So anyway, I just looked at my watch and said, well, if the owner of this boat shows up within a half hour, then I have the gas to chase it for him. Otherwise, I just don't have enough gas. And so 4 hours later, a guy shows up and is waving me down. He's in a kayak. So, we talked a little bit through the window, and, he said, well, can I catch it? And I said, nope. And he said, well, is it eddying out or anything? And no, it's going right down the middle of the river. You are not going to catch it. And he said, okay. And then he just continued on down the river. And I kind of expected to see a whole lot more people showing up, because usually these guys are in groups. But then nobody else showed up. And so I was kind of wondering, well, this is kind of weird. But I just decided to pull over for the night. And so I just pulled over, and I was drinking a drink or something on my boat. And I saw this person walking on the trail on the other side of the river. And, that's kind of weird. You don't see people walking on the trail. At that point, it was about 12 miles downstream from Corn Creek. And then I noticed that, well, he had a kayak on his back. And, so I yelled across at him and then said, well, hey, you want a ride? I'll give you a ride. And, of course, he was very pleased to hear that I would give him a ride because it was about 7:30 and he still had 12 miles to go to get back to Corn Creek. So during a ride up to Corn Creek, I learned that he had hiked from Corn Creek 5 miles to a side stream that was very full of runoff, and he'd been running his kayak in that stream, and somehow it got away from him and ended up down in the river. And he thought about jumping in the river and just swimming after it, but then he thought better of that, and so he ran back to Corn Creek, so that's another 5 miles of running. He got his second kayak and then followed it downstream, but he apparently wasn't going really fast because he didn't know if he would just go right by it if it eddied out. So, he was in a conflict there. Does he go fast or slow? And that's probably why it took him 4 hours to get to where I was. So anyway, he was one gnarly-ass little dude, and, because he had hiked 5 miles, then ran 5 miles, then kayaked, maybe 15 more miles downstream, and then he was didn't seem to be bothering him at all that he was going to be having to hike back to Corn Creek, probably in the dark. So anyway, I emailed him a few weeks later and asked him what happened, and well, it turned out his kayak had eddied out somewhere downstream. Somebody picked it up and took it to the Forest Service, and they had mailed it to him because it was an inflatable. And his quote in the email was something to the effect of, "Everything turned out so wonderful that I'm confident I have not learned my lesson." Now, when rafters upset jet boaters, typically it's because the rafter is taking the channel and just staying there and not getting out of the way for the jet boater to go by. And I think this is mostly because they're just uneducated and they're new. They don't participate in the sport very often, so it just doesn't occur to them that they need to get out of the way. Very rarely is it malicious, and this sort of interaction could be reduced simply by educating rafters that, well, yes, the jet boaters actually do have the right to the deepest channel, and the jet boaters, well, their boats will be damaged if they hit rocks, where the rafters not so much, particularly where the water is slow. So the point here is that it's not malicious when they seem to be irritating a jet boater on purpose. They're not irritating you on purpose, they're just uninformed. Or at least most of the time that is true. And on the flip side, it appears that rafters are upset with jet boaters because the jet boaters throw wakes and make a lot of noise. Now this is true, never mind that the rafters on a big river with big rapids in it, they go through rapids that make just as much noise as a jet boat, and the waves clearly are much, much bigger than anything a jet boat will throw. So it's clear that they're not really upset about the wake or the noise, they're upset about something else. And as far as I can tell, it's actually because they perceive that the jet boat has disrespected them if the jet boat does not come off plane and idle by them as slowly as possible. So basically they say, well, when you come by me, you got to kiss my ass. But again, it's only a small percentage of rafters that behave this way, and they just kind of give everybody a bad name. So as far as I can tell, the disrespect urge is heightened when on the river for both rafters and jet boaters. So they get upset because you've disrespected them and they want to pop a cap in your ass or something like that. And well, why do I say this? Well, if I go to Walmart and I drive around Walmart with my shopping cart and I see people interacting, and there's all kinds of people in Walmart. I've never seen a fight. Never does anybody say, "Ooh, your cart got too close to mine, so you've disrespected me and I'm gonna pop a cap in your ass." They never say that. And I should repeat that I'm not just pointing my finger at rafters, I'm pointing my finger at everybody. Some people just seem to like to take offense while they're on the river, and in fact that seems to be their primary objective. Maybe they eat breakfast or something like that and they say, well, now I'm gonna go down the river, with my boat, and I'm gonna get offended. And then I'll come home and I'll be all happy because I'll have been offended. Now, certainly I'm not trying to imply that there are no jackasses out there. Yes, there are. And it would be nice if they would quit being jackasses. They know exactly what they're doing and they're irritating everybody. So they wake up in the morning and have breakfast, and then they think, boy, I think I'll go down to the ramp and block it for an hour. And this urge seems to be heightened while they're on or near the river. For example, if you're at Walmart, I've never seen somebody deliberately block an aisle in Walmart. And again, there's every type of person there. And never have I seen somebody block an aisle for an hour like they will at a ramp. So for some reason, a boat ramp or a river seems to give them a heightened sense of need to behave poorly. But most people, they don't really behave that way. They don't think that this is how the river should be.
It's hot now. Paul punches are thrown. Paul and Rondo throwing punches. Ingram comes in. He's throwing punches.
And they really don't think the river should be like this.
What have I ever done to make you treat me so disrespectfully?
Be my friend? Godfather?
Good.
And wouldn't it be nice if the river could just be like this?
On an evening like this, I could kiss everybody. I'm so full of love and goodwill. On an evening like this, I'd adore everybody. To come and dine, the pleasure's mine, and I will pay the bill.
This message brought to you by Sambo and Honky, and now by Cracker and Boy.
Cracker